McKinsey had the 7 S's, and since then we've all been trying to be as good as McKinsey. But the 5 C's sum up the issues that every generation is going to face. And they become more difficult with each generation because the entrepreneur doesn't have to worry about any of this. When the entrepreneur gets up in the morning and shaves, he's looking in the mirror at the chairman, the owner, the founder, and the head of the family. And every generation on down, those roles get split up. Ownership and management get split up. Senior leadership gets split up. Some family members don't work in the business. And so then these issues down on the bottom start to become critical. Because it's not one person saying, I believe here's what should happen. It's a family. And how does the family make the decisions? Part of it is communication, and we'll talk a little more about that. Now here's what happens to family businesses as they transmit or grow. We start out with an owner-manager, one person, the entrepreneur. Then we go to the sibling partnership. That person's 5 or 6 or 4 children. Or if you're in China, one of the issues we're finding right now is China had a one-child policy. So there is only one successor. So if that successor is not really a good, strong candidate, you've got a huge problem. Or if they choose not to take over the family business. This is an issue where we're not sure what's going to happen to family business in China because you don't have a lot of kids to take over the businesses. Then you go to the Cousins Consortium, or the Cousins Collaboration. This is the stage Steve alluded to and Mr. Canu talked about, and that is a group of people who didn't grow up quite as connected, who have a lot of different relationships, and then there's also this other problem with cousins. You know what's the problem with cousins? They were raised by outlaws, okay? See, the siblings were raised in the same family, typically by the same parents or at least the same parental group. The cousins grew up in different families because of the in-laws marrying in and because the family starts to change a little and because they lose their connection to the founder. They're not there with the founder all the time. They didn't hear the founder's ideas. They don't understand where we come from. Sometimes when I teach students and I'll talk to the MBAs and I'll say, well, tell me a little about your family business. I had one MBA student whose family business, he didn't realize came out of the oil and gas business until he started to do some research. Because what had happened is they had started in oil and gas, and then they went into convenience grocery stores, and the grocery stores grew so big that they eventually spun off the gas stations. But until he did history on his family business, he never knew they were in oil and gas to begin with, and petroleum products. And so cousins don't know a lot about the business or the values or anything else. We can imagine when we get up to the family syndicate, which is second and third cousins. Or in the case of the Vendel family, the family that sponsors my research center at INSEAD, that's a French family, 300 years old. We were training 3 of their directors at our executive program. They came to INSEAD. 3 distant cousins, all been named to the board of directors. They had never met each other before because there's 1,400 cousins. So this family syndicate is a real challenge. And here's where we start to have the first set of issues. We have to start to think about things like family agreements, clear policies that says how are we going to do things, because the cousins need to set a structure that will carry the family indefinitely into the future. When I wrap up, I'm going to share a few examples from Cargill. Cargill is the largest family business in the world, and they've done some remarkable things. They weren't a part of my presentation, but my captain here on our preparation said, well, we should mention Cargill, so I'm going to mention Cargill because I was their consultant and they let me speak about them. And so that's changed the topic as we go along. Here's another thing that happens, and this is some specifics that happen at that cousin's generation. Here's all the different issues that work against the cousins. 1, different family and professional values and experiences. I had an American family. They ran several big factories, and one of the rules their grandfather had was a family member opens the plant and a family member closes the plant. Okay? Worked really well. He made sure all 4 of his sons took one of the plants and closed them. The sons got married, and 2 of the sons married women who went along with their husbands, and 2 of the sons married women who said it makes no sense for you to have to open and close a plant. You've got 1,000 employees in each of those plants, and plenty of them are smart enough to take a key and open up the door. That was a value conflict. And it went through to the next generation because when the cousins took over, part of the cousins said, I'm not opening up the plant. And the other cousin said, you have to open up the plant. That's what happens Families start to develop different values. So we have to articulate those values and think about what's important to us. Multiple generations and shared leadership. We can have grandparents, parents, children, cousins, nephews, daughters, lots of people, lots of generations. And one big issue in generations is different expectations of risk, different expectations for the business. And a lot of what happens in family business is what we call structural issues. It's real easy to say my brother's a bad guy and that's why we don't get along. Your brother may be a bad guy, but oftentimes when we do a little more research, we find that it's not about differences in personality as much as it is about differences of where people are. Take